Welcome to the What's Next Longevity Venture Summit. I'm Fred Fishkin, Mary's co-host on the What's Next Living Longer, Better, Smarter and the What's Next Longevity Deal Talk podcasts. In this session, Caregiving Trends, a research briefing from Susan Golden, Director of DCIX at the Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute, lecturer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and thought partner with Pivotal Ventures. First, a few words from Mary.
So we're very excited to have this component of our conference because what happens when you build a company, you have to go in and learn what the analysts are saying about the space. So they provide the overview and show you the needs and help you understand the customers in that space. So to kick us off, we have Susan Golden. And Susan, we're so excited to learn about your research and your new book.
I'm really delighted to be here today. Hello, I'm here today to tell you about some of the caregiving trends based on some research we've done over the past 2 years at the Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute in partnership with Pivotal Ventures. We focused on what is happening in the US in terms of caregiving, and particularly focused on the growth in caregivers in the United States, and that there are over 48 million unpaid caregivers. This was exacerbated during COVID. We got to know much more about caregiving, and we know that over 60% are women, that it has financial impact on them for at least 45%, and over 60% are working. So it becomes a real challenge, as we know. And during COVID, for the first time, caregiving was on the front page of every newspaper and in every conversation. Till then, most caregivers, the unpaid caregivers, actually never thought of themselves as caregivers. Most of them thought of themselves as daughters, sons, relatives caring for a beloved family member. But what happened during COVID exacerbated things dramatically. And what we've also learned during our research is how enormous a market this is. It's a gigantic market opportunity, over $42 billion for daily essential living activities to support them. Caregiver quality of life is a whole segment, care coordination, health and safety awareness, transition support, and this social well-being as well. This is an enormous business opportunity, but an enormous need. And this was exacerbated, as we said, during COVID and continues to be. These activities, this industry includes things that you might not normally think about: retrofitting homes, telehealth, meal services, transportation, medication management, and care navigation, but also supporting the health and wellness of these millions of unpaid caregivers. And in our review, our goal was to identify what was happening for the caregivers, what were the barriers they're facing to get access to innovation and solutions to help them, and what were the barriers to all these great companies that are starting up to address that? And why aren't some of them able to scale? And where are the growing needs of caregivers, and how can innovation support them? And we issued our research findings last fall in September with a landscape review of these caregiving innovation summaries. And here are some links, and they'll be able to provide them to you through the conference today. And what we did is we understood the caregiver journey. Where are their pain points? What's the mapping of current solutions right now? There are many, but many are not reaching the customers, the actual caregivers or the care recipients, because of a real channel challenges that we're going to discuss. And we also understood better from our research, understanding what the pain points are of the innovator. We convened a CEO roundtable of caregiving CEOs to get their feedback on what would help them grow their businesses. And then our report also identified initiatives that could promote solutions, new business opportunities, and actually a need for public-private partnerships to solve and address the growing issue of unpaid caregiving and caregiver support. So who is the caregiver customer? There's obviously the end user, but there's also the purchaser, and it is not always the end user, as we'll discuss. The influencer, a family member who might be involved in the caregiving decisions and support, the daughter, which is synonymous for the family member who's helping, but it's often the daughter. The independent health insurers are a primary purchaser going forward, government services, and healthcare providers. But we're also seeing that employers are a significant part of the growing customer who's paying for these services. And Medicare Advantage and employers are increasingly the largest payers for caregiver support services. And this illustrates just what a typical caregiver might go through. They might be given some information at discharge. They might look at websites. They might go to an NIA website, ARP. There's tons of great information out there, but it's not all in one spot to get it. And at the end of your caregiver information journey, trying to find out what you need, you're exhausted. It's not curated often. There are terrific nonprofits out there, but not all people know about them. Not all caregivers find out about the local area agencies on aging, caregiver resource centers. So it's a complex process that could be made simpler. And when in our research, caregiving can be broken down into 26 different subdomains where you might target your innovation and your intervention. That's how complex a problem it is. You might need multiple of these, not just one, but there's just many innovation opportunities going forward to address the needs of caregivers and their recipients. We did a spotlight on a variety of companies. These are just some of the ones that we interviewed, learned from. There, as you can see, it's a growing industry. It needs to grow. We need many more solutions, but these are just some of the ones that are we interviewed that we learned from. And there were common obstacles to growth that when we analyze the data and information from these companies. One is there aren't easy distribution channels, whereas you might have a common website for selling your products on Zola, as an example for weddings or Wayfair. There is no such common place to go to find the family caregiver. And related to that is that the caregiver often doesn't identify. So if you're marketing to a caregiver, they may think, as often they do, it's the paid caregiver who takes care of somebody. That's a caregiver, not a family member. So that's an important issue, that there aren't easy distribution channels, which is why often companies now, instead of going direct to consumer, are tending to sell to employers and to Medicare Advantage plans as a way to create their products and services, have more distribution that way. There's flaws in our health system design where often caregivers are not identified as part of the team that needs to be involved in health information and decision-making. There's a lack of market awareness as that caregivers are not a known quantity. They're very varied. Not all caregivers are of the same age, same geography. I mean, there are so many different variations in caregivers, and caregivers can be from 18 to 90. I mean, it ranges that large a spectrum. The market hasn't matured yet. We need policy to help fund caregiving, which we don't really have in the United States. There's a complex product mix. And in the end, there's also just not sufficient staffing. There is a caregiver crisis in the United States. These are the most traditional, right now, most common ways that people are selling their products and services in the innovation space. And these are just examples of some companies. And some companies have multiple channels for dissemination and acquisition of their product. This is some of the companies that we engaged with in a roundtable, which was the first of its kind, to get from CEOs candid assessment, what would help them and help their business grow? What are some of the obstacles they face? And some of the findings were really alarming in a way that of how much effort it takes sometimes to acquire a customer, the process of selling into Medicare Advantage, this process of selling into employer benefits, and their desire to go direct to consumer, but they often find it so difficult to do so. Some companies notably have been able to do that, such as Cake and some of the senior housing community companies. We have many quotes in our report, but this is just some of them that are particularly striking and I think really capture what the challenge is here. It's hard to sell things to families when every family is literally creating an entire delivery system all by themselves over and over again. And it's over and over again because your discharge diagnosis will vary and your needs of your care recipient will vary over time and become more and more complex. So every family is doing this yet they're doing it alone, often without the support that they really need. And then CEOs commented what's the challenge of what's the right way to communicate to the market. Family caregivers, as we've been discussing, are not really a category. It's not like you can go to college students or new moms. It's cross-cutting across all demographics, and that's a particular challenge. We also know that the challenges include addressing a complex and outdated regulatory system, and that family caregivers, in their opinion, the CEOs, are interfacing with a fundamentally broken and disintegrated governmental system that is central to the financing of a lot of the care delivery system. So it's complex, and finding out what's covered and what's not covered. And most people mistakenly think that once you have Medicare, you're going to have paid in-home care. So it's a very complicated system for people to understand. So what do we need? We need more funding, actually, despite all this. And there's this enormous opportunity. And we've seen some growth over the last few years in venture capital investment. And this report that's put out by Crunchbase usually comes out in early June. And I think in the next week, we'll see more data. And I suspect it's grown in this past year, but still not enough compared to other industries. A lot of these startups need more capital. And I encourage venture capital investors to think about this market opportunity and the many that it results in. And here's examples of the many VCs that are already in this space, investing in caregiving and longevity. But interestingly, several new venture funds are coming in with a specific caregiving thesis around older adults. And that's really encouraging as they understand the complexities of the market. One of the new entrants to help startups in this space is the new Techstars Future of Longevity Accelerator. This is supported by Pivotal Ventures, and right now they're entering their third year. These are the 20 companies that have been involved in 2020 and in 2021. Some really outstanding companies all around the thesis of how can we support the 48 million unpaid caregivers and their recipients. And I encourage you to look at in the report, these are featured as well on the Techstars website to learn more about these very interesting companies. What's changing in the industry from an investor perspective is that there are, for the first time, just in this past year, 2 caregiving companies have unicorn valuations, Papa and Honor. And this is exciting to see because venture capitalists are often looking for that and have been reluctant to think that there might be any. So it's an encouraging bellwether. So here are some of the innovation needs and opportunities we've identified that are still quite underserved in the market. Housing. There is insufficient housing to support older adults who want to age in their own homes. So that might involve home modification services and products to support them aging in place. But it also, many want to not move to an assisted living community or a continuing care retirement community, but might choose a different housing alternative. And one of the companies that was in the Techstars Accelerator is an interesting company called Upside Home, which has the opportunity to move to a fully furnished apartment in different cities with all the support services, and they partner with Papa for Papa Health Services. So it's an alternative, and more of these alternatives are going to be needed to support older adults, along with intergenerational housing. We don't have enough longevity health services that can be offered through the home. We don't have enough fintech solutions to support financial caregiving and to prevent financial elder exploitation, which is quite common. We don't have enough navigators and care coordination companies. We need more help people enrolling in Medicare and Medicare Advantage, because it is a very complex process and growing more complicated as there are new entrants into the Medicare Advantage space. We need multi-generational opportunities to have teams working together who are multi-generational to support development of these caregiving solutions. The concept being to design with, not for. So having an older adult on your team could be a strategic advantage. We need to address social determinants of health. Loneliness and isolation is one of the key causes of illness in older adults, and it's prevalent, particularly when people age at home, yet they want to age at home. So this is the conundrum, and some companies are doing well in addressing it. We need more. And the whole area of taking care of the caregiver from a health, wellness, and financial standpoint, becomes critical as a need and innovation opportunity. One of the other areas that we focused on, in addition from the innovation space, the caregiver space, is what's happening in terms of infrastructure and policy. And we're really dealing with a stagnant, outdated system. As we mentioned, pandemic exacerbated these flaws. Social distancing and lockdowns became particularly hard for aging adults who are more likely to struggle with isolation. So we need a way to address that. And we've noted that most unpaid caregivers do not self-identify, and we don't have government support for in-home care. Who is going to pay for all this? Everybody at some point is going to need caregiving, particularly in the last few years of their life. And we need to think that through and have policies that support that so that all older adults can age with dignity going forward. The need going forward that we also address, that it would be ideal if we had caregiving infrastructure. We would all benefit if there was a go-to place that accumulated and evaluated all and curated all the information that's out there. We don't need more information resources. There are excellent ones that are on various disease-specific websites, ARP, elder care locators. There's excellent information all over, but not everybody knows where to find them. And wouldn't it be great if there was one place to go where you could have timely and curated information free to all caregivers? And wouldn't it be great if those caregivers could then be matched with the solutions, both nonprofits, startups, companies, so they have a curated list of solutions that would help them. And their solutions will change as the caregiving needs of their care recipient changes. And in a place where caregiving innovators, investors could meet up and create collaborations with clinical and strategic partners to enable evaluation and impact metrics, because any Medicare Advantage plan, any employer over time is going to want to understand what is the benefit of investing these dollars to provide this caregiving benefit, and how does it help the care recipient or the healthcare system or reduce healthcare costs of my employee. So this is our report. There'll be links made available to you so that you can get it. And in the fall, we're going to be issuing part 2, which is based on what would a caregiving marketplace look like. A care hub is what we're calling it. And what are the existing care hubs right now in the marketplace? And how can we integrate those so that everybody in the United States would know where to get caregiving solutions that are appropriate for the person that they're taking care of. So these are some of the latest trends, and I'm happy to take any questions going forward.
Such a comprehensive look, Susan, and so relevant to this conference. Many of the investors that you shared are at that conference and participating, and some of the portfolio companies from Techstars are also participating. And of course, Techstars themselves is part of the pitching panel, and it's exciting to see the questions they ask. But this, you showed us the market opportunity, you showed us who's investing, the ecosystem, the unicorns, and we hope all of the investors and entrepreneurs watch the session. We're very grateful to Melinda Gates. Melinda was an advisor to us at Third Age, and she's really come out as one of the real strong leaders at Pivotal. And one of our judges was from Pivotal yesterday as we looked at the competition. So you're right on the market and right on the money for this, and it's such great thought leadership coming out of Stanford. So thank you for being part of it.
Oh, very delighted to be part of it.
And tell us, you came to this conference once, right?
Yeah, when I was a DCI fellow in 2016 and got very passionate about innovations for longevity, yours was the first conference that I attended. And as I was saying, over in Berkeley, and had a showcase, and I realized this is our industry. I didn't realize what an industry it was. I thought, and that's what got me hooked, that there's so many needs and so many opportunities for innovation, and most venture investors still are not in this space. They should be, they need to be. We need more capital, and we're grateful for the kind of leadership that Pivotal Ventures is showing, funding the first accelerated just focused on caregiving for the first one, which is really exciting.
Right. And gee, I met Melinda early on, and through a connection with someone who knew Mrs. Gates. So thank you once again, Susan, for this great thought leadership and this great market overview of the needs. So over to you, Fred.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Susan, for such important and timely information. Truly golden, I guess we could say. Thank you to our sponsors as well, and thanks to all of you for being with us and taking part in the What's Next Longevity Venture Summit.